This week I found a poem that sort of illuminates some of the importance of our topic for this week. It's a prayer of confession for the Transgender Day of Remembrance, which was November the 20th. Divine Beloved, you are spirit, you are truth. We are made of flesh, of bone, of blood, and of spirit. We are created in your image. We reflect your brilliant and beautiful diversity. That brilliant and beautiful diversity is hated and violated, tortured and killed because it does not fit the gender mold of the masses. When we live across gender, we are hated, abused, and killed. Today we remember our siblings, their flesh, their bones, their blood, and their spirits. Today we ask forgiveness for our complicity with this violence through silence, nervous laughter, thoughtless disregard, or baseless fear of our siblings who beautifully defy society's binary gender construction. Forgive us, awaken us, remind us, transform us. I invite Teresa Pizzuto, who is our Director of Religious Education. Sorry, I piled up your chair there. Sorry. It's like my car. Let me scrape out a place for you. Those who have ridden in my car can laugh about that. Okay. So we did a little shift this morning since Josh and Will can't be here. So thank you for helping, Teresa. The focus of this service is particularly important to me now that I'm a grandmother. I'll show you pictures of baby Claire. But the reality is that I have no legal right to my granddaughter because my daughter's partner gave birth to her. So this service is important to me. It's important to me also because I don't want to be afraid, as I have been before, when my daughter and her partner hold hands in public. I don't want to be afraid that they will be injured like some of my friends were during the Civil Rights Movement. And I'm often aware that even when we decide that we want to make a difference in the world, we sometimes do so out of compassion without really comprehending the depths of fear and prejudice that exist and that threaten others. So I think we as Unitarian Universalists need to periodically look at ourselves and our congregation to discover the places where we need to recommit ourselves to tearing down the walls that might separate us from individuals and groups to whom we might reach out with care and concern. It's time for us to reconsider our commitment to being a welcoming congregation. For those of you who may not know, UUFC made a commitment several years ago to being a welcoming congregation. This designation is given to UU congregations after its members engage in a learning process to affirm their commitment to be open to and welcome members of the gay, lesbian, transgender, and bisexual community. And after the congregation participates in self-exploration. It's been a number of years since we became a welcoming congregation, so perhaps we do need to look back at what we're doing and how we are reaching out. So I ask us, what are we doing to build a community where everyone feels welcome? do we, by our naivete, misinformation, or misperceptions, unintentionally keep people away? What does it mean to welcome not only gays and lesbians, but people who are bisexual and transgendered? So if Will were here, you can be Will. If Will were here, I would ask him, how hard was it to come back through church doors after feeling rejected or shunned or thrown out of the faith community that nurtured you? You had an interesting experience recently, didn't you?
Yeah, I guess I can't be Will. No one can speak for anyone else. So, but I can share, we were talking earlier about, and please let me know if you can't hear me, because you have the mic. Okay. I'll speak into your throat. So I have a cousin who has a lifelong partner. They've been together 28 years, who's also male. So they actually got married, and they have wedding rings. And my cousin's father died. My uncle died about a month ago. And so we were at the funeral. And it was a Catholic mass, because my uncle and aunt are Catholic. But
I think, Jorge, do you mind turning that off? We're getting really bad feedback. Thanks. I think there's some feedback problem.
It's off. Okay. So the thing was, my cousins, there are 5 of them, and then Jim, my cousin David's partner, ended up being the pallbearers. And they knew the priest of this Catholic church was quite conservative. He had actually been doing sermons that involved politics and stuff, so which was rather distressing to them, but particularly because of how conservative his views were. And the thing that was hard for them when I talked to them later was that when they were getting ready to, do the pallbearing, he said, well, everybody put your right hand on the casket. And that's the hand they have their wedding rings on. So they were both a little nervous, because when they put their hands down, they're right next to each other. They matched. And so, the fact that they even had to be thinking about that while they were in the midst of their grief. And then the other aspect was they were not sure what would happen when it came time for communion. Because while they're not Catholic, in honor of their father, they were going to go ahead and do the communion. And so fortunately for them, there were several people doing the communion, and they didn't have to go up to the priest. But it just reminded me of some of the things we take for granted. And that is, it's a hard thing to do if you are a part of the majority. It's easy to forget the simple little challenges that can face people. So that's one of the things we were talking about.
And I realized, as much as I wanted to celebrate Andrew and Jenny's wedding this week, I felt like I was betraying my daughter, because even though she and her partner had a beautiful ceremony, they're not legally married in North Carolina. So by supporting my son, am I on some level betraying her? I wonder if any of us gathered here have experiences that we've shared with friends or loved ones that might make it challenging to reconnect with the faith community. Any thoughts about that? Or yes, Andy. I'll try to translate. The problem is the feedback, but maybe if you take... Right. Let me try. Okay. Sorry, eventually, after I've been here 5 years, we'll work at the microphones. Thank you, Cindy. hug on you, Andy.
Make the screen.
Try this one.
Okay.
Okay, any better? Yes. I'll just talk like this. Okay. And this just happened last week. I went up to my cousins in Raleigh for Thanksgiving. And among the 20 people that they had were Orlando and Gary. And Orlando is Puerto Rican and very open about his gender, and they both have rings, they just got rings, but Gary hasn't even told his own family yet. He has not come out. He knew that at this gathering that he could, but it's just still very real with me, and they were adorable. And just wanted to share that.
I have a story about one of my students who did his master's degree with me. He was a fantastic student, very bright, and I hoped to keep him here for his PhD, but he wanted to go somewhere else, and so I helped by writing recommendations. He went to Johns Hopkins in Baltimore, and later I learned he was gay. He did not tell me that because he was worried about being here. And this year, Riley and Lee and I got to fly up to Delaware, where he and his partner were married legally. And I was so pleased that he invited me and my family. And his family and his partner's family were all there and all happy and celebrating. And it was just fun, a really fun wedding, and made me feel so good.
I have known quite a number of gays, of course, through the years, especially in my graduate school, where Latin American men who are gay leave their macho societies and come up to study foreign language, Spanish, here. So almost all the men in my graduate department were gay, and several of them were lost to AIDS. But more recently, I had a student in my Latin American literature class who reacted in an interesting way to a story we read about a Latin American woman who went off to Spain and pretended to be married but really wasn't because she didn't want to be an old maid. And he said to the whole class, "This is just like me. I'm gay. But my parents don't know that, and my parents don't accept that. And I have a partner who lives in Charleston, and I've taken him home, and they think he's my best friend, but they don't know he's my partner." And no, he took the partner home, and he said he told his parents that he had a girlfriend in Charleston, and she had a whole life. She was all, I don't know, in great detail. The best friend, who was really his partner, said, "Yes, Susie is so wonderful." And the parents went on for years thinking that Susie lived in Charleston and that she always had to work over Christmas, and that's why they never met her. They thought that the friend was wonderful. They loved him. But still, after 3 or 4 years, they had still not come to terms with telling the parents that they were partners. Okay, thank you.
I think, Carol, I don't want to but I want us also to cover a few more things because you've been in Clemson as an academic, and I think Cindy's statement really raises an issue because in academic communities, even if you're a Unitarian Universalist, very often it's difficult to come out depending on what you teach and what department you're in. And I think during this year when we are celebrating the 50th anniversary of the desegregation of Clemson, we also have the opportunity as people of faith to work with an organization that's gotten started called A Better Clemson. And Josh, who was to be here this morning, is the person who really sort of spearheaded that, didn't he? And when Teresa, Josh, and Will and I got together last week to talk about the service, I asked him, why? Why did you do this? Yes, you're a gay man, but, there are lots of gay men at Clemson. And he said, I have been so fortunate that my family has been so loving and accepting and open, and realized that so many people at Clemson don't have families like that, or don't have faith communities that accept them. And that is what really inspired him to try to make a difference in the Clemson community. And Teresa, you were at that first organizing meeting. Do you want to say a little bit about what A Better Clemson is going to be about?
Sure. I guess my first question is, some of you are obviously involved with the university. Have you heard of A Better Clemson? So some of you are familiar with it. So it did start last year with Josh's idea, and then talking with other people. They gathered together many different people who might be at different levels of the university to discuss the idea of coming up with either a task force or a commission or something specifically to work on creating a more welcoming and inclusive environment for people who are members of the LGBTQ population. So just like they already have a commission for women, they have one for African Americans. They felt, because of the issues that are specifically facing this group of people, that it was important that the university show its commitment to trying to change the environment. So that's kind of the basis. So people got together, discussed how it might happen, created a few little task forces, and so they were very successful in actually creating a proposal, talking with President Barker, and they've gotten the okay to move forward with the task force. So they are now at the point where they are taking nominations for people to be a part of that task force.
And I'm hoping that a UU can be part of that. And actually, as a faith community, and I'm so glad y'all saying that at the beginning of the service, because this really is about faith. What do we stand for? What do we do? And I think as a committed group of people here, this congregation has always been about social justice. And, just yesterday we were talking about there's so many needs in the community. How do we focus? And there's so many faith communities of all kinds that focus on things like poverty and hunger. And we participate in that also. But there are very few religious communities in this area that are willing to commit themselves to support the rights of those in the Clemson area who are part of the GLBTQ community. Do we look at where we might serve a need that others aren't? What is our vision for how we want to be a change agent to help transform this community? And I know, Teresa, a lot of your work has been in the area of dealing with diversity issues. What are some of the things that you think might help our community be more open and address issues?
Well, based on the work I did, I was the director of diversity education at Clemson for about 4 years, and so I know based on that, I have ideas. I'd also love to hear ideas from this group about, where is your level of information now? Because some of you went through the commitment process for the becoming a welcoming congregation. Some of you are new, so you probably didn't do that. So, one thing would be looking at sort of a refresher for that for everybody. So that's one idea. Another one is, and I alluded to it a little earlier when I spoke, is to really do some soul searching around heterosexual privilege. And that's the concept many people are not aware of. The idea that any majority group has certain privileges that are inherent. Just being a member of that group gives you things that people who aren't a member of that group, they don't have it. And it's like a fish in water. When you're in it, you just oftentimes don't realize the simple little things that matter, like your language. We have a very common question, what did you do last weekend, right? Well, for someone who's a member of the LGBTQ community, that can be a very complicated answer, right? Depends on whether you're out with that person or not, whether you want people to know. So even putting mementos on your desk at work, right? Most of us may feel very comfortable if we're in the majority of putting pictures of our loved ones on our desk. Well, if you are not a member of the majority, it can be, again, a scary thing, depending on where you're at. So it can be very simple little things, our language, using gender-neutral language. So there's so much stuff that you can explore and look at and just start to become more aware about. So the idea, like I said, of, even just doing a little bit of inquiry around that, learning, and then just learning, I know you probably have friends and loved ones who may identify as part of that community. So being non-judgmentally curious about, your friends and loved ones and learning more about them and finding out, what are they proud of as being a member of that group? Where is it really difficult for them? Because that's another way for you to learn how to be a better ally. Because if you aren't a member of the group, then ideally as someone who's concerned with social justice and helping that group, then you would become an ally to help them.
And I think that as we started exploring this topic in the last week or so, one of the things that Teresa came up with is, I think, what was that, like a group?
Oh, yeah. The idea of maybe having a team of people who really are interested and care about this, would be an inclusion team. And it wouldn't just be for LGBTQ, because, of course, there are many groups we want to think about. So,
and even when we try to be sensitive, sometimes we're not aware. Like in my previous congregation, there were 5 people sometimes in wheelchairs on Sunday morning. Well, you have to be very aware of where do you put the chairs. So inclusion has lots of implications for us as people of faith. And I know that we could continue talking, and I hope that this is just sort of a beginning conversation for us to continue exploring how we can deepen and enrich our faith and embodying our faith in the larger community. And it's in that spirit that I invite us to stand and share our closing reading, hymn number 579.